After a brutal attack near an abandoned quarry, a former forest ranger finds himself hunted by something that learns, adapts, and mimics. I'm Mr. Midnight Horror, your terrifying host. If you're already part of our pack, your support means everything to us. Each like, comment, and share helps uncover more stories like this, or subscribe to see what rises from the depths of darkness and unfolds before you. Now, let's begin. The first thing I noticed when I stepped back into Asheville was how still the air felt near the woods. No birds, no wind brushing through the pines. It was like the land itself held its breath. I hadn't been back in over 12 years. My grandmother, Elizabeth Harland, raised me after my parents died in a house fire. Her property sat just outside the city limits, pressed against the Pisgah National Forest, near a massive abandoned rock quarry locals always whispered about. She died alone 2 weeks ago. Heart failure, they said. But the way her neighbors talked, quietly, avoiding my eyes, I knew there was more to it. The house looked the same. 2-story wooden frame, porch wrapped in peeling white paint, surrounded by a rusted fence. I was back not just to settle her affairs, but because something didn't sit right. I'd seen the coroner's report. There were bruises on her arms, faint scratches, but no one mentioned them. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint smell of earth. Her flashlight was still on the table, dead from use. Next to it, a half-burned candle. That night, I tried to sleep, but woke up around 3 a.m. to a low creaking on the roof, too heavy for raccoons. I stared at the ceiling, not breathing, listening to what sounded like slow, deliberate movement above me. When I finally worked up the courage to look, there was nothing. But the next morning, I found claw marks, deep, parallel grooves, on the window frame of my old room. Later that day, I went into town. People recognized me. Some nodded politely. Most avoided eye contact. One man, Elijah's father, no, not Elijah, forget that name. His name was Howard Pressman, an old Vietnam vet who once helped my grandmother fix her roof, stopped me near the gas station. "You back for good?" he asked, not quite friendly. "Just settling her things." Howard took a moment, glanced toward the trees, then leaned in. "She used to say something lived in that quarry," he muttered. "Said it scratched at the windows some nights. Thought it was coyotes. I went up there once with her. Place didn't feel right." "What do you mean?" His eyes narrowed. "No birds, no bugs, no sound. Like something hollow lives in the stone." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. But that night, as I sat in her kitchen drinking lukewarm coffee, I thought back to the time I saw something move behind the shed when I was 10. My grandma had made me stay indoors for days after, told me I'd looked too long into the wrong place. Now I wondered what she'd meant. A few days later, I visited the ranger station where I'd once worked before moving to the West Coast. I asked for temporary duty in the region, and due to short staffing, I got it. They sent me on patrols near the forest edge and that damned quarry. My first real sign that something was wrong came on the 3rd night out. I responded to a call about dead livestock. A local farmer found 2 goats torn open. No blood, no organs missing, just empty, as if something had scooped everything out and left the shell behind. I checked the area. No tracks, no drag marks. But there were broken branches on a tree almost 10 feet up. Something had climbed, or jumped. And when I walked toward the quarry, my flashlight flickered for no reason. That night, I parked near the edge of the forest in my government-issued SUV. I had a pair of binoculars, a loaded sidearm, and enough training to deal with anything from bears to mountain lions. But nothing prepared me for what I saw around 1:30 in the morning. A shadow moved across the base of the quarry, tall and upright. At first, I thought it was a person, maybe a hunter. but it moved wrong. The shoulders were too wide. The arms hung low, almost reaching its knees. Its head turned, and for a split second, the moon caught its eyes. Red. Not reflective. Burning red. I didn't sleep. The next day, I returned to that spot with Deputy Mitchell. We didn't find tracks, but the brush was flattened in a pattern that suggested something massive had moved through. Mitchell looked nervous. "This doesn't feel right. I've hunted in these woods since I was a kid. There's no game anymore, no deer. No squirrels. Nothing. Not even insects." That night, something came back to the house. I heard the door rattle just after midnight. I crept down the stairs, gun drawn, flashlight in hand. There were no sounds, just tension, pressing on every inch of the house. When I swung the door open, I caught a glimpse of a shape disappearing into the tree line. I stepped outside and nearly threw up. On the front porch, laid neatly on the welcome mat, was the skinned carcass of a raccoon. No head. No organs, just meat, still warm. The air smelled of wet fur and something else, iron and rot. I knew then this wasn't random. It was a message. The next morning, I drove straight to the ranger station and submitted a formal incident report. I left out the part about red eyes. I wasn't ready to get labeled unstable. Sergeant Neil Braddock read the report in silence, cigarette burning low between his fingers. He looked up only once. "You're talking about something upright," he said. "Big, fast. No sign of scavenging, no sign of attack or struggle." "Yes," I replied. "And it left a raccoon's skin on my porch, like a gift, or a warning." Braddock tapped his knuckle on the table. "You ever hear about the Jacobson case? Back in '98, 2 rangers, 1 tracker, 1 missing hunter, all found near the West Ridge. Dismembered, no clear tracks. All the trees around were gouged." "No one mentioned it." He leaned forward. "They don't like to. That section's been off limits unofficially for years. But it doesn't stay contained. Whatever it is, I asked to see the files." He shook his head. "Destroyed, or so they say." On patrol that afternoon, I took the trail north of the quarry, where a thin line of rusted fencing marked the boundary between parkland and the old stone pit. The fence was half collapsed, and something had clearly been moving through it. 50 feet beyond, I found a clearing. The grass was flat. The trees were scorched at the base, blackened like something had exploded from the center. In the middle lay a deer carcass. Its ribcage was broken outward. Nothing else touched. The skull was intact. Eyes gone. No blood. I backed out, heart hammering. This was no animal kill. Back at the station, I asked around. Ranger Colin Rusk, newer than me but respected, finally spoke. "Last spring, we found a black bear dead near that ridge. Same kind of wound. Ribs pushed out from the inside. Liver and lungs gone. No predator I know does that." I told him about the red eyes. He paled. "You saw it?" "Not fully. You're lucky." When I pressed him, he hesitated, then whispered, "One of the old-timers called it the quarry walker. Said it wasn't flesh and blood like us. Said it's something old, watches, learns." I left the station with the weight of that name grinding in my mind. That night I armed the house, not just the front and back doors, but the windows too. Nailed wooden slats over the cellar entrance. I even reinforced the attic hatch. Then I sat at the kitchen table with a flashlight and a loaded Remington pump action beside me. Around 1 a.m. the silence came back. It wasn't just quiet. It was hollow. Like sound, refused to enter the property. The trees stopped moving. Even the air felt dead. I heard it again. Movement on the roof. This time slower. Heavier. I aimed the flashlight up through the window and saw the silhouette of something massive crouched near the chimney. Its shape shifted as it moved, Not quite right. Like it didn't fully understand how to be on all fours or stand on two legs. It scraped its hand, not paw, along the edge of the roof. 4 fingers, 1 thumb, long, clawed. I stayed frozen. Breathing felt loud. Then I heard it sniff. Not animal, not human, deep, wet. It stood slowly and vanished behind the roofline. I didn't sleep again. The next morning, I found the gutter bent outward and covered in dark streaks. Not blood, thicker, black, like tar. The material stuck to my glove and smelled like copper left in the sun. I took a sample, sent it to a contact at the University of North Carolina who owed me a favor. Told him it was from a possible predator encounter and needed a biological profile. He said it would take a few days. Later that afternoon, I walked the tree line around the quarry. I brought a thermal scope with me, borrowed from the station. Nothing registered, no heat. But something had moved the trees. I found broken saplings, claw marks deep into the trunks, and a place where the dirt had been disturbed, like a massive body had laid there, watching. I left a motion-activated trail cam nearby, another by the base of the quarry. 2 hours later, a call came in from a local camper reporting screams near the northeast trail. I arrived first. The tent had been ripped open like paper. Inside were blood spatters, torn fabric, and human teeth on the ground. No body. We followed a trail of drag marks for 50 yards before they stopped abruptly. No prints. No signs of continued struggle, like the person had vanished mid-drag. Deputy Morgan Santiago arrived just as we were flagging the area. She looked down at the scene and muttered, "This isn't a bear." She was right. Back home, I reviewed the trail cam footage. At first, nothing. Hours of trees swaying gently. Then, around 2:17 a.m., the feed jumped, static. Then a single frame, blurred but clear enough. A massive figure, hair covered, bipedal, shoulders wide enough to block a third of the frame. Its eyes caught the infrared, bright red, focused straight into the lens. It knew it was being watched. The cam went dead right after. I replayed the footage over and over, each time feeling more exposed. Like by watching it, I was inviting it in. At 3:03 a.m., something crashed into the porch. I shot up, flashlight in one hand, shotgun in the other, and kicked open the front door. On the steps, the body of a red fox lay split from throat to belly. Its organs missing, its eyes gone. But its heart still beat. It throbbed once, twice, and stopped. It had just been dropped. Fresh. I aimed into the woods, expecting to see something, anything, but there was only blackness, and the feeling that I wasn't alone. I called the county sheriff's office that morning, demanding they send someone to collect the fox's body. I didn't mention the heartbeat. I knew how that would sound. Instead, I emphasized the pattern: skinned carcasses, missing organs, no scavenger behavior. The operator promised to dispatch a team within the hour. They never showed. At the ranger station, Sergeant Braddock pulled me into his office before I could even sit down. "You've stirred something," he said, locking the door behind us. "Got a call from one of the old land surveyors. Guy says he's been mapping soil erosion on the quarry perimeter for 15 years. Claims the earth's been sinking in that area, deep sinkholes forming near the lower basin." I frowned. "And?" "He says the ground moves, literally shifts at night. Not just erosion, like something burrows." The room went quiet. Then he added, "He also said he saw bones, human, buried shallow, like they were clawed up, not dug." I requested to be reassigned. Braddock gave me a long, blank stare, then leaned in and said, "If you leave now, you're condemning whoever replaces you. You're the only one treating this like it's real." So I stayed. That night, I returned to the site of the torn-open tent, this time with 2 other rangers. Colin Rusk and Matthew Kearney, both armed, both uneasy. We hiked through the forest quietly, flashlights pointed low. The scent of old blood lingered in the air, mixed with something sour, fermented like rot sealed underground for too long. At 1:12 a.m. we heard it. A scream. But not from any person. It was long, guttural, and full of pain that didn't sound human. Colin froze mid-step, whispering, "That's no animal." We turned off our lights. Whatever it was nearby. We crouched, ears tuned to every crack of bark, every shuffle of branches. Then a noise from above, branches moving overhead. Something massive passed over us, leaping tree to tree, fast and heavy. A shape flashed above, dark against the stars. We backed up slowly. Kearney whispered, "What the hell kind of thing does that?" We never got the chance to answer. A few feet ahead, something dropped from the trees. The ground shook as it landed. All three of us raised our weapons, but our flashlights only caught the edge of movement. Tall, hunched, covered in coarse, matted fur. It stood on two legs, arms longer than a man's, hands ending in claws like hooked blades. It didn't charge. It just stared. Its eyes were glowing, not from the flashlight. They burned from within, deep, dull red like coals left in a fireplace. Then it opened its mouth. The sound that followed wasn't a roar. It was breath, long and guttural, like exhalation through broken vocal cords. Kearney stepped back too quickly, slipped, and fell. That's when the thing moved. In a blur, it crossed the distance between them and slammed him to the ground. The impact cracked his ribs loud enough to hear. He screamed once, a short, sharp sound, and then blood spilled from his mouth. Colin fired. The blast hit the creature in the shoulder. It flinched but didn't fall. Instead, it turned, picked up Kearney like a rag doll, and hurled him against a tree. The sound of bones snapping was unmistakable. We ran. Colin shouted as we moved, "Back to the truck! Move!" Behind us, branches broke, trees shifted. The thing wasn't chasing at full speed. It stalked us, like it knew we were too slow to get away. We burst through the trailhead, dove into the Ranger vehicle, and Colin floored the gas. I looked back just once. It stood at the tree line, watching. Kearney's body was never recovered. We didn't speak much on the way back, but Colin broke the silence near the station. "I think it let us go." "Well, why?" "Because it wanted us to see." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept remembering the way its eyes seemed to lock on mine, the pause before it attacked, as if it was measuring us, like it was deciding who to kill, who to spare. Around 3 a.m., I received a call from the university lab. "Whatever you sent me," the text said. "That substance, it's not animal blood. High concentrations of iron and ammonia, but no cells, no DNA. It's synthetic in some way, but it reacts like organic matter." "I don't have a name for it." I hung up without responding. The next day, I walked the property around my grandmother's house. I hadn't checked the back shed since returning. The lock was rusted, barely holding. Inside, everything was where she left it, except for one thing, a map, pinned to the wall. Marked in red circles were locations in the forest, dozens of them, dates beside each one, some from as far back as 1973, all near the quarry. Then I saw it. One word, scribbled at the top of the map in her handwriting. Sentinel. I stood there, heart pounding, trying to piece it together. She'd known, and she'd been tracking it. As I turned to leave the shed, I saw something on the ground just outside the door. 3 gouges in the dirt. Fresh. Deep. Parallel. It had been here. While I slept. I took the map straight to Sergeant Braddock. He locked the station doors behind us and spread it out over the conference table. The red circles made a pattern, arcing outward from the quarry, always in a wide, sweeping path, never entering the city, but encroaching. She knew, I told him. My grandmother tracked it for decades. That's why she lived so close. She wasn't just hiding, she was observing it. Braddock rubbed his temples, then said, "Your grandmother wasn't the only one." He opened a drawer and pulled out a folder marked Hollow Basin, 1974-1996. Inside were photographs, grainy and old, torn tents, clawed trees, animal corpses with their organs missing. And a final photo that made my stomach twist. A man's body pinned to a rock face, arms spread, chest opened, hollowed out like a specimen. "There was a joint task force once," Braddock said. "Federal and state. The incident got buried when 2 agents disappeared. Official story, landslide. We never spoke of it again." I asked him why he never told anyone. He leaned back. "Because we're not supposed to beat it. Just survive it." That night, 2 hikers were reported missing near Pine Grove Campground. I went with Colin Rusk and 2 deputies, Morgan Santiago and Philip Yeager. We split into pairs, Morgan and I heading east, Colin and Yeager circling the ridge. The forest was unnaturally quiet. Around 11:47 p.m. we found the first tent, ripped clean down the center. Blood soaked the floor, but there were no bodies, just hair. Long strands, human, tangled in the torn canvas. Morgan whispered, "Look at the trees." The bark had been peeled off in strips, high above our heads, like something had raked claws across them from 10 feet up. We heard a scream, short, choked off, followed by rapid gunfire. Then silence. We ran. We found Yeager's flashlight first, spinning in the dirt. His rifle lay next to it, the barrel bent. Colin was on his knees a few feet away, hyperventilating. He didn't speak, just pointed. Yeager was slumped against a tree, but his body wasn't whole. His right arm was gone, torn at the shoulder. His face was frozen in a scream. His torso had been opened, ribs bent outward like wings. No organs inside, no blood on the ground. The creature had taken it all with surgical precision. Colin muttered, "It moved too fast. It didn't even make a sound." We dragged him out. Morgan covered our retreat with a shotgun, eyes never leaving the tree line. That night, I sat outside my grandmother's house, rifle across my lap, staring into the trees. It wasn't about food, not anymore. The creature was testing limits, learning patterns, and leaving bodies as warnings. The following afternoon, I received a call from a local wildlife photographer named Jarrett McCall. Said he had a trail cam go dark near the quarry, but captured something before it died. He sent me the footage. The timestamp read 2:41 a.m. The trees swayed gently under moonlight. Then, just off-center, something stepped into view. Tall, covered in fur matted with mud and blood, its limbs too long. It crouched, then stood, turning slowly toward the camera. Its face was partly human, muzzle-like mouth, forward-facing eyes, and a mouth that curled into something almost like a smile. Then the camera cut out. McCall was dead the next morning, found in his van outside his cabin, throat torn out, blood pooled on the seat. The footage had been deleted from his cloud. I only had the copy he'd sent. I stopped sleeping. Colin, still shaken, took leave. I couldn't blame him. Morgan stayed. Said she'd seen worse during a 6-month deployment in Afghanistan, but I saw the way her hands shook when she cleaned her weapon. The way her eyes kept scanning the tree line, even in broad daylight. We planned a night watch. Braddock refused to authorize it officially, but we didn't care. We knew it would strike again. We set up near the Lower Basin Trail, a known path between the last few kills. Morgan, myself, and a third ranger named Dominic Slate. We each had thermal scopes, flashlights, radios, and enough firepower to drop a bear. By 1:30 a.m., the forest had gone dead again. No wind, no movement. The temperature dropped suddenly, almost 20 degrees in under 5 minutes. Then something moved on Slate's thermal. A heat signature. Tall, fast, moving through trees like water. We waited. Then Slate went quiet on the radio. We never heard a struggle. We found his body suspended from 2 trees, his spine bent backward, ribs shattered from the inside. Something had opened his chest and removed his heart. Still no blood, no prints. Morgan stared at the scene, her voice low. "It's not hunting." I said, "Then what is it doing?" She didn't answer. Back at the house, I found a note tucked inside one of my grandmother's old field books, dated August 1981. It read, "It leaves the organs because it's looking for something specific. I don't think it's just a creature. It's not natural, it's sentient, it learns, it mimics, and I think it's trying to understand us." I felt something shift in the room. The smell hit me first. Iron, sweat, wet fur. Then I turned toward the back door. It was open, just a crack. The flashlights flickered as I stepped forward. Outside, pressed against the porch rail, was something wrapped in burlap. I approached slowly, gun raised. It was Morgan's vest, torn, soaked in blood. No body, just her voice, echoing faintly from the trees, calling my name. From 2 directions at once. The sound of her voice didn't stop. It echoed through the trees in the exact pitch and tone Morgan always used. Calm, measured. Except it was wrong. Too consistent. Too rhythmic. Like something was repeating a recording with only a vague understanding of what words meant. I stepped backward from the porch. The forest was pitch black. No stars, no wind, only a heavy sky pressing down. The air was thick, humid, felt like breathing through hot cloth. Morgan's voice came again, this time from behind the house, then from the front, both identical. I aimed my flashlight into the woods but refused to follow the sound. Whatever it was wanted that. Instead, I bolted the door and checked every window. Nothing moved for hours. I sat in the living room with the shotgun across my lap, light barely holding against the dark. At dawn, I searched the woods. No sign of Morgan. No blood trail. No body. Just her vest, torn in 2. Inside the pocket was her notebook. 1 page was dog-eared, with a single line scribbled hastily in ink. "It speaks now." That afternoon, I filed an unofficial missing persons report. Braddock pulled me into his office again. "I got a call from the feds. Someone flagged our reports. They want to send a wildlife specialist, some ex-military biologist named Dr. Gideon Harlan." I blinked. "Harlan?" "Yeah. Says he's your uncle." I hadn't seen Gideon since I was a teenager. He'd always been more myth than man, rumored to have worked black budget programs for the Department of Defense. No one ever confirmed anything. He arrived the next day in a black SUV, gray hair tied back, beard unkempt, eyes sharp like glass under pressure. "Cliff," he said flatly, stepping out of the vehicle. "We need to talk." In the ranger station's back room, I laid out everything, the photos, the footage, the map. Gideon took it all in without flinching. Then he opened his own file. It contained a single photograph. A dissection. The body wasn't human. It had the musculature of a man, but the proportions were grotesquely elongated. Arms too long, jaw unhinged, spinal structure warped. "This was recovered in Alaska, 1987, he said. Operation called Cold Vein. They classified it as an unknown bioform, but unofficially, some of us believed it was manufactured." "Manufactured?" He nodded. "Weaponized evolution. Something created to survive beyond us. Not by us. We believe it escaped containment. And now it's here?" "No," he said. I think this one evolved on its own. A variation, something older, more refined, and it's learning human behavior fast. I asked him what that meant. He said, "It doesn't just mimic voices. It mimics decision-making. It studies our emotional responses. The bodies it leaves? It's trial and error. It's trying to learn us from the inside out." He pulled out a diagram, anatomical sketches of organs, systems, tissue. "It's dissecting us," he said, "to understand what makes us afraid, what makes us react, and when it's finished studying." He didn't finish the sentence. That night, we returned to the quarry with 2 more armed rangers and Gideon carrying a customized tranquilizer rifle with enough sedative to drop a grizzly in seconds. We positioned ourselves near the base of the old gravel trail, overlooking the pit. The temperature dropped again, fast, down to 42 degrees in under 10 minutes. Then the stench hit. Rot, sulfur, iron, and something worse. Something like old flesh locked in a basement. We saw it move at the edge of the pit, emerging slowly, dragging its hand along the rock wall. Gideon lifted the rifle and aimed. "Do not shoot to kill. It might trigger a response." But the creature didn't run. It stood fully upright, nearly 8 feet tall, body covered in coarse, dark fur that hung in clumps. Its chest was broad, legs bent backward at the joints, but its face, that was the worst, because it had lips, human lips, stretched over a jaw too wide, exposing rows of jagged teeth that didn't belong in anything from this earth. And its eyes, those smoldering red coals, locked onto mine like it knew me. Then it spoke, not words, sound shaped into syllables that mimicked language. It said, "Cliff." Gideon fired. The dart hit square in the chest. The creature stumbled, took a step back, and then lunged. It crossed the ground in seconds, fast as a bullet. One of the rangers, Samuel Briggs, screamed as the thing tore his leg from the hip. Not cut, tore. The sound was hideous, wet and snapping, like meat being pulled from the bone. It grabbed the second ranger by the head and slammed him into the quarry wall. His skull burst like a ripe fruit. Brain matter sprayed across the stone. Gideon fired again, another dart. The creature hesitated. Then it ran. Not into the woods, into the quarry, down into the darkness, dragging the corpse of Briggs with it. We didn't pursue. None of us spoke until we were back at the SUV. Blood covered the windshield. Bone fragments stuck to the tires. Gideon sat in silence the whole drive, until we reached the edge of town. Then he said, "It wasn't trying to kill us." I turned, stunned. It ripped 2 men apart. He nodded. "But it could have killed us all." "It didn't. It left you untouched. It wanted you to see." "Why?" "Because you're part of its test now." Back at the house, I found something new waiting on the porch. A human heart, still warm, still beating. Laid gently on a folded ranger uniform. It belonged to Morgan Santiago. Her name tag was still attached. We buried Morgan in an unmarked spot 2 miles from the ranger station. Gideon said it was safer that way. "The thing brought her back," he reminded me. "It knew where to leave her, where you'd find her. That's not random." I didn't argue. But something broke inside me that night. I saw her heart beat once more before it stopped. Not from life, but from some lingering biological command. A message in muscle. Later that evening, Braddock called. His voice was raw. "There's movement in the basin. A tremor hit just after dusk. Locals heard it from downtown. Sounded like a groan from underground." I looked at Gideon. "It's opening something." He nodded. "Or something is coming up." We returned to the quarry before midnight. Brought 2 deputies with us, both armed with military surplus gear. Gideon had an underground scanner rigged with sonar. We hiked to the lower basin. The smell hit first, overpowering and moist, like decaying mulch soaked in blood. The ground was cracked in long, uneven fissures. The pit had shifted. The rock face split down the middle, revealing a dark cavern, about 6 feet high. No wildlife, not even insects. As we approached, the scanner began to buzz. Gideon stared at the monitor. "There's a tunnel system under the basin, miles wide, interconnected." "How deep?" He didn't answer. We entered the main cavern with flashlights drawn and weapons raised. The walls were slick with condensation and stained with what looked like blood. But it wasn't red. It was black, thick, and it pulsed faintly as if responding to our presence. The corridor stretched deeper than the quarry should have allowed. 40 feet in, the temperature dropped to 38 Lautherfs. Breath turned to fog. Then we found the first body, or what was left of it. A skeleton, partially defleshed, pinned against the wall with long iron spikes through the limbs. The skull had been cracked open from the top, peeled back like a lid. The brain cavity was clean. "This isn't killing," Gideon muttered. "It's research." We pressed further. We passed 3 more corpses, each in varying states of dissection. A deer, a black bear, a human child, maybe 10 years old, long decomposed, but preserved in unnatural cold. The tunnel opened into a chamber. It was massive, nearly 30 feet high, 40 feet wide. The walls weren't stone anymore. They were flesh-like, ribbed, pulsing faintly, like we'd entered the belly of something still alive. In the center, a mound of bones, hundreds, maybe thousands. Some bleached white, others fresh, human, animal, unidentified. Gideon stepped closer to the wall and pressed his gloved hand against it. It rippled. "This place isn't just where it lives," he said. "It's part of it." Then we heard movement. Not footsteps, shifting. The mound stirred. A shape emerged from beneath the bones, rising slowly. Not the creature we'd seen before. Larger, covered in thick, armored flesh. Its skull was longer, snout more pronounced, but it had the same burning red eyes. It didn't charge. It watched. Behind us, something else moved. The first creature. The one that had killed Santiago and Briggs. It flanked us from the rear. Now, we were surrounded. "They're not alone," I whispered. "No," Gideon said. "This one isn't the same. It's older. The other one might be offspring, or a prototype." The larger one stepped forward. Its voice filled the chamber, deep and resonant. But it wasn't words. It was intention. A pressure inside the skull. Gideon dropped to his knees, nose bleeding instantly. I raised my weapon. The creature lifted a clawed hand and placed it against its own chest, then against the wall, then back to me. Understanding struck like lightning. It wasn't just learning us, it was growing itself from us. This quarry, this place, it was a nursery, a crucible. Our biology, our fears, our instincts. It was absorbing them all, evolving into something that could move among us. "Get out," Gideon croaked, blood dripping down his chin. "Now." We ran. One of the deputies tripped in the tunnel. I heard bones snap, a scream cut short. I never looked back. We reached the surface just before the tremor hit again. The ground buckled. Trees swayed. The basin split wider. Rocks tumbled into the pit. The entrance collapsed behind us. Gideon lay on the ground gasping. His pupils were blown wide. He couldn't speak. I dragged him to the SUV, blood smearing the seat. We got back to the station by dawn. He spent the next 4 hours unconscious. When he finally came to, he gripped my arm hard and whispered, "It's finished collecting. The next phase? It's not study. What is it? Assimilation. He passed out again. Braddock paced the station. We can't contain this. I agreed. That night we heard a new sound from the forest. Multiple voices, mimicking people. Not just Morgan, others. My father, my grandmother, even my own voice. Repeating phrases, crying, laughing, all from the woods. The phone rang. A whisper on the other end. We're learning. The line went dead. We spent the next day preparing for war. Braddock gathered every available ranger, off-duty cop, and civilian willing to help. In total, we had 12 people, hunters, veterans, locals with more bravery than sense. We armed ourselves with rifles, shotguns, and hunting knives. Gideon built 3 incendiary traps using fuel tanks and tripwire. The plan was simple. Surround the basin, force the creature out, trap it in a kill zone. Burn it if necessary. Everyone knew the risks. No one expected to return. We moved at sundown. By the time we reached the ridge, the forest was already dead silent. The moon hung high, bloated, pale, casting sharp shadows over the quarry. We split into 3 groups. Gideon, myself, and 2 others set the charges along the inner edge of the pit. We positioned floodlights and infrared sensors. We poured gasoline over choke points and stationed shooters with clear line of sight. Everyone was in place by midnight. Then the sounds began. Not from one direction. From all. Voices. Dozens of them. Whispers from the trees, laughter in the wind, cries for help echoing through the pit. They weren't real. They couldn't be. But they were perfect imitations. And they came from everywhere. One of the volunteers, Dennis Harlow, broke formation, ran screaming into the woods, shouting for his wife, who'd been dead 5 years. We never saw him again. Then the lights failed. All at once, not a power surge, a calculated blackout. Gideon shouted through the radio, "They're here." They came in waves. Not just one creature, 7, some smaller, others massive, all bipedal, all wrong. They moved through the trees like shadows come alive. No sound, no warning. The first kill happened behind me. A scream cut off in seconds. I turned just in time to see a man's head fall from his shoulders. Braddock opened fire. The blast lit up the woods. One of the creatures took a slug to the chest and stumbled. Then it charged. It crushed him in a single blow, arms torn from the sockets, spine snapped like driftwood. We fell back to the upper ridge. Gideon triggered the first fuel trap. The explosion rocked the forest, flames shooting 30 feet into the sky. One of the smaller creatures burned alive, shrieking in a voice that sounded eerily like mine. 2 others went down in gunfire. The rest scattered into the trees. Blood soaked the ground. Half our team was dead within minutes. We regrouped near the southern edge of the quarry. Only 5 of us left. Gideon, myself, Ranger Keaton, Deputy Mason, and a teenager named Jonah, barely 16, had come with his uncle. Now the kid was covered in blood, holding a rifle too big for him, eyes wide with shock. The forest was burning behind us. Black smoke billowed upward, then silence again. Jonah whimpered. "It's not over. I can feel it." He was right. The largest creature, the one we saw in the underground chamber, emerged from the pit. It wasn't rushing. It walked, deliberate, confident. Its skin shimmered with heat. The firelight reflected off its fur like oil, and its eyes locked onto me, as if this was personal. Gideon raised the last incendiary. "This is it," the creature charged. I fired 3 times. It didn't stop. It struck Keaton first, lifting her into the air and slamming her into the rock wall hard enough to crack her spine. Gideon pulled the trigger on the final trap. The explosion hit point blank. Fire swallowed the beast. It staggered, shrieking, not in pain, but fury, still alive, but wounded. It turned toward Gideon. He didn't run. He drew his sidearm and emptied the clip into its chest. Then, it tore him in half. His last act was to look at me, calm, resolved, like he'd expected this. I grabbed Jonah and Mason. We ran. We reached the edge of the forest just as dawn broke. Smoke still choked the trees. The creatures were gone. So were the bodies, all of them. Only blood and fire remained. At the ranger station, we locked every door, sat in silence. Jonah couldn't stop crying. Mason asked, "Do you think it's over?" I didn't answer, because I knew the truth. It wasn't. That night, the phone rang. A voice spoke. Not Morgan, not my father, not me. Gideon's voice, one word, run. We didn't leave. We should have. But after Gideon's voice came through the phone line, unmistakably his, despite his torn corpse having been burned and buried hours earlier, something inside me broke. Mason wanted to flee. Jonah had already packed his things. But I couldn't do it. Not yet. I had to know if it was truly finished. So I went back to the quarry, alone. The air was still heavy with ash. Trees were scorched down to the bone. The ground was blackened, but the pit, the massive scar in the earth, was undisturbed. No rubble, no remains. The opening had closed, not sealed, healed. I walked the perimeter, rifle slung across my chest, flashlight in hand. It was mid-afternoon, but the shadows felt longer than they should have. The birds had not returned. The wind didn't move. As I crossed the far side of the ridge, I saw something that stopped me cold. Footprints, but not just one set, 3, each deeper than the next, each larger, spaced out in patterns, like they were walking in formation. Moving away from the quarry, into the forest. I followed. For over a mile I tracked them, through creeks, across fallen logs, over ridges, always deeper into the wild, until the track stopped at the edge of a shallow cave, and inside, empty ranger uniforms. 6 of them. Laid out carefully, boots aligned, belts folded. Each one belonged to someone dead. The implication struck me like a blow to the chest. They hadn't just killed. They had taken. And they remembered. I left the cave shaking. Back at the station, Jonah was gone. Mason said he left a note. 4 words. They called my name. He'd walked into the woods before sunrise. No one saw him again. That night I stayed awake, sitting on the porch of my grandmother's house, shotgun across my lap, flashlight steady on the tree line. I watched, waited, and just before dawn, I saw it. A figure. Not tall like before, smaller, man-sized, standing between the trees, not hiding, not running, watching me. Its eyes glowed dimly, red, yes, but not burning. Curious, cautious. It stepped forward once, then stopped. Raised one arm, not as a threat, but as mimicry. A wave. Then it disappeared into the forest. That day I packed my things. Mason had already left town. I boarded up the house, left a warning spray-painted on the quarry fence. Do not enter. They remember. I returned to city life. Tried to forget. Tried to drown it all in routine, meaningless tasks, empty conversations, and quiet, uneventful nights. It worked, for a while. Until the dreams came. They started small, flashes of forest, shadows, bones. Then they grew. Now every month when the moon rises full, I feel it in my chest. Tight, aching, like something under my ribs trying to listen. And sometimes, late at night, I see the shape again. Not near the trees, but in reflections. Behind me, watching, like it left something inside me. or took something out. I've spoken to no one about it, no friends, no family, no doctors, because there's nothing they can fix. I've moved 3 times since then. Doesn't matter. It always finds me. A week ago, I woke to muddy footprints in my hallway. And last night, I heard my grandmother's voice, clear as daylight, whisper from the kitchen. It's not over, Cliff. The sentinel is awake. I sat in the dark until morning. No lights, no movement, just listening. Because I know this truth now. The creature was never just one. The quarry was never just a home, and the experiments never stopped. They're just patient, and they're still learning, still watching, still becoming. And when they're ready, they won't come in the dark. They'll walk in daylight, wearing our faces, calling our names. Cliff's descent into the depths of Asheville's haunted quarry stands as brutal proof that some predators don't stalk for food. They stalk for understanding. The sentinel is still out there, evolving, remembering. And this nightmare is far from over. Like this video if you felt the weight of that final confrontation. Comment below. What moment made your skin crawl the most? Share it with someone who needs to know that the woods hide more than just silence. And if you're ready to face what watches from beyond the trees, subscribe to Mr. Midnight Horror and turn on the bell so you're never alone when the darkness returns.